All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the December 13th working group meeting, second last penultimate meeting before we break for the holidays. So thanks for being here. We'll start off with some new members. We have a slew of new folks who joined us from the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. If any of those folks are online, I'm not sure if I see any. But if I'm missing you and you're in the call here, please introduce yourself to the group. No? All right, didn't think. We also have Stanley Bayer and Kimberly Knowles from Worker Tractors who have joined us. I also believe I do not see either of them on the call this morning either, so that keeps it short and sweet. All right. In that case, Bridget, I will pass things over to you and we can get the ball rolling.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dan. So slides sharing here. All right. Can everybody see the presentation currently?
We can see your, oh, yes, there we go. Now it's in presentation mode. You're good.
Fantastic. All right. So thanks everyone for joining us this morning. Today's presentation is a little bit different format than our typical one. We're going to actually be doing a roundtable discussion, talking about some of our project updates. We're going to do a quick overview of the AgRobotics Working Group project as well, just for some folks that are new on the call or maybe don't have the full background on where this came from. And then we'll be talking a little bit about the research that was originally the research priorities that were selected last year, and then where we're looking to do things different for this coming year. So first and foremost, the AgRobotics Working Group, it is a network of collaborators, as you guys know, bringing together producers, industry, academia, a variety of different groups to learn about new technologies, get support for existing technologies, and collaborate for the betterment of the Ontario ecosystem. And so we'll go into a little bit more in detail what that means. But there are 7 key priorities that Dan and I are focused on to make sure that when we're delivering the working group leadership and everything, that we're giving the team and the group what they need. I will mention, if you look on the flyer here, the working group is funded by the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership. So that is a 5-year, $2.5 billion investment by the federal, provincial, and territorial governments to strengthen competitiveness, innovation, resiliency of the Canadian agriculture, agri-food, and agri-products-based center. So our working group is currently funded by that program, and you'll see their logos up on the screen. So thanks to those funders. So with this project, the goal is to bring together the industry representation to provide strategic direction as we look at a few different things. So we want to have an open channel of communication between producers, agribusinesses, organizations. And I think Sean's presentation last week did a fantastic job of, that's one example of somebody that's like, hey, here's a problem I'm trying to solve in the industry. Here's what worked, what didn't work. So we can kind of move forward and find better solutions to a lot of the challenges that are in the industry. It's also about sharing knowledge and funding resources within the AgRobotics ecosystem. So when you guys are sending us events to go to or funding priorities for us to share with the group, that's again to help us share that out with the network. It's about connecting new technologies with Ontario producers. So if you're a startup AgRobotics company or ag technology company and you want to get your name out there, or you want to be actually connecting with farmers to test your product out in the field, between the AgRobotics Working Group as well as our other project, which is the Innovation Farms Ontario, that's how we actually deliver that for you. And then lastly, through the Innovation Farms Network is assisting Canadian and international companies with actually validating their technology. So there's 7 key focuses for the next little while that we're kind of planning on. So the first one is the AgRobotics Working Group Network. So as you'll see now where we're asking a little bit more of a breakdown when you join the call, that's just so Dan and I can have a bit better understanding of how many producers versus academia versus industry are on the calls, so that we know if we need to get more producers to make sure there's an equal voice from everybody, that we can do that. Secondly is website and communications. So again, as we're being transparent and sharing knowledge across the ecosystem, we want to make sure that the communications are representing the work that we're doing. Third is applied research at the commercial field scale level. So we're going to go into that a little bit more in detail today, but that's essentially actually ground truthing the technology that the working group wants to focus on, with a goal of being focused on producer issues. So if it's weed resistance, or if it's other issues that farmers are bringing forward to us, that's the goal of that research. Fourth is demonstration and events. So making sure that we have a presence in the industry at a variety of different trade shows, primarily this coming winter. And then also in the summer demo days that we're doing, so people can actually have the opportunity to see these different solutions in the fields, ask questions, that kind of thing. The fifth one is mentorship of Ontario startups. So with RHA Ventures, who's one of the partners in this project, they are providing mentorship support in terms of hours and support in networking. So we, at a later meeting, will talk a little bit more about what that looks like, but that's one of the key priorities. Annual report. So again, just bringing together all the information that the working group is doing and compiling it into an annual report so that that can be disseminated for the ecosystem. And then seventh, as we kind of move through this project, it will be long-term sustainability of the AgRobotics working group. So currently we have funding from two different partners, OMAFA as well as FCC, with the Innovation Farms Ontario and the AgRobotics working group. But long-term, as this project continues and we are showcasing that there is a need and we are driving innovation in the industry, making sure that the decisions that we're making today will make sure that in the future we can be sustainable to continue to provide this service. So with that in mind, one of the key pieces for us is being able to make decisions with the feedback and the guidance from the working group, with the focus that at the end of the day, Western Fair does still have priorities that we are responsible to our funders as well as our partners. So as the working group is growing and there's more and more people joining, Dan and I very much appreciate when people are providing feedback and speaking up in meetings. Steve, that was a really great mention of, do you want the cameras on? Do you want the cameras off? We love to see your faces. We want to hear what you have to say, but I also know sometimes that it can be a bit intimidating if you're just joining the group for the first time and you're not entirely sure where your spot is. So with that in mind, as well as the working group gets bigger, we're currently over 300 members. Sometimes 300 people can't make a decision very easily. So we've started to kind of break out some of our project priorities into subcommittees. So two of them you've already had the opportunity to join. So the first one is the data and validation subcommittee. And then the second one is the engagement and demo day subcommittee. So those ones are already starting. They're typically, I would say quarterly, but sometimes depending on how close we are to the event, it might be a few more meetings. But if you are interested in joining those committees, those ones are out already. And then the one that we'll be focusing on today is the research subcommittee. And that one will be to assist us with, as we get research solutions or requests for information, having a way to actually evaluate that with a smaller group, so that we can take that and then present it back to the broader working group. And then fourth is the mentorship subcommittee. So this one we'll touch base on just another time, just because there's a lot to kind of go through today. So before I move on to the next part, I will mention, if you are interested in being part of the research subcommittee, you can put your name in the chat. You can, I'm going to say raise your hand, although I can't see anybody. Just the way that my presentation is, I can't actually see your faces.
I'll take
okay,
anyone.
fantastic. So let Dan know. Just wave your hand or raise your hand, which is the little heart icon in the bottom of your screen, or put it in the chat, and then we will mention that. And then I also will say that as we grow with the research subcommittee, we will say, if you are from a company or an academic institution or an association, we are going to limit it to a maximum of 2 people per group, just so that we don't have too many people from one organization or from one background that are not, so it's fair for everybody to have an opportunity to be a part of that. So I'm just going to give a second for Dan to write down any names.
You can keep going. I'm good.
Okay, perfect. He's on it. Awesome. And then so lastly, for the mentorship subcommittee, we'll come back to that one at another date, but to give opportunity for people who are interested in that one as well. But if you do know you're interested now, you can send an email to us for the mentorship one. Okay, so the next part is, as you know, we work quite closely with Haggerty AgRobotics on a lot of the research they have been doing and are doing in the fields this past 2 years. So for future, just to kind of bring all the research and the questions and things like that into one spot, we've created two forms, which will be distributed to you. So the first one is an expression of interest from producers looking to solve a problem with a robotic solution. I will add one key note here. It is for field-specific issues. We're not in the greenhouse sphere yet, just because the field conditions obviously can be a lot more difficult to kind of have a solution that works in a variety of different systems. So that's the key focus for us right now. And then the second one will be an expression of interest from other industry representatives looking to trial new robotic equipment or support additional research. So there are a few different options out in the industry in terms of grant funding just to do research. I will mention for the purposes of the working group, it is a little bit more specific to technology that's commercially ready, as well as solving a need within the industry that the working group decides is a focus for us. So we will come back to those two forms shortly. So first off, we're going to go through the research priorities that the group had identified in 2024 to 2025. So last March, there was a meeting of the working group where we had talked about 7 projects that were going to be a focus for this coming year. Now you'll notice I have 3 of them starred on the screen. I wanted to say a quick thank you to Mary Ruth and her team for bringing this to our attention. And my apologies that we did not share this before, but the farm dried onion trials, the Oreo trials, and the Piquetta lens trials, they were actually conducted with Haggerty AgRobotics and the University of Guelph's team through the Agri Alliance funding. So we do need to make a special mention to them that that is funded by that project. And in our annual report last year, we need to actually, Dan and I are in the process of updating that because it doesn't properly give the credit to them for that project that was a collaboration. So you will see a few changes in that regard, but that's why those 3 are starred. So thank you to Mary Ruth and her team for bringing that to our attention. But I will give Chuck the opportunity, if he would like, to touch base a little bit on where we left off from this past summer to where we are currently. And just for a second, I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Oh, you can leave that if you want.
Oh,
That
okay.
actually that was helpful for me to
Okay, stand by.
keep me focused.
You're taking away his notes.
Well, she did send me the presentation directly, but it's easier to look at it at the same screen everyone else is seeing. So the as Bridget mentioned, with the role of the farm droid and the ongoing project, there's still one more year left on that. We did 2 years of trial work with the farm droid robot. For those of you who are been on the calls and are familiar with it, I apologize if you're going to hear some things you've already heard before, but for those that are new, essentially what we are looking at is an alternative use case for the farm droid robot, alternative weed control method, planting method, and there is some work that was done on seeding the onions versus transplanting them and what the comparisons were going to be in terms of yield and cost comparisons, that kind of stuff. So in 2023, we kind of started on this project. In 2024, there were some modifications were done to try to improve the results. And, we do have the option or the obligation to continue this on for one more year. And so that is what's going on with that. And just to, in summary terms, I think the results were generally positive. And then between the group of us, significant improvements were made in terms of the speed of the robot from one year to the next. With regards to the Oreo, really what this was around was, with an autonomous system, comparing it to a traditional farmer's operation. So really, this was just comparing what is the farmer doing today versus, doing this with a robot? And there's lots of options there with, how good was the weed control? How fast can it get it done? Cost comparisons, all these types of things. And a lot of that revolved around, what applications can you even use a robot for? That was really what 2023 was about. 2024 was, kind of taking those solutions and actually using them. And so the team from the research station outfitted the Oreo robot with a very traditional cultivator as well as a band spraying system that they built. And we made some modifications to the power system on the robot, as well as to basically be able to monitor the sprayer and generate some data based on that. And so that can continue for another year as well. And as well with the Piquetta lens trial, as for that system, one of the ideas of this, and the reason why this was included, is that precision agriculture is more than just equipment in the field. It's also about analyzing data and how the plants are reacting. And the allure of the Piquetta lens system was that tissue tests could be done a lot faster, with the long-term goal of automating that process, as the machines go across. And so what the team at the research station have been doing is broadening the scope of that lens and doing trials on other crops. That lens system was originally designed for potatoes, but moving that system into other crops, there's a lot of interest in that. And then our team spent some time with winter wheat and some corn leaves as well. So that is also an ongoing project. The Nexus robot, we tried that. That was basically strictly for doing imagery as well as weed control in leafy green crops and other crops. That project came to an abrupt end in July, about the 1st of July, almost before we could even get started in 2024. We did run the Nexus robot to some degree in the prior years, but that project has come to an end as the company is no longer exists. So we had to end that one. So that project is not going forward anymore. And yep. The other work that we've been doing with the TED it's actually Cave Spring Vineyard, not Cave Springs. Sorry, we'll have to get that. I always make that mistake. And but we're doing work with undervine weed control is really all that we got to in 2024. And kind of over the course of the year, two things got discovered. One was how to map the vineyard correctly to allow the robot to run autonomously. So at the start of the season, we were able to get the TED robot to run down 2 or 3 sets of vines and do that successfully. And by the end of the season, it could run the whole 14-acre vineyard all on its own without stopping. And which was a major improvement. The Nile company has outfitted the TED with a full autonomy kit to leave the robot unattended, which is going to be the future moving forward. As of right now, we are leaving the robot. We always had a technician watching the robot just to make sure it didn't do something horrible. But the idea of the full autonomy kit is that it can be left unattended. The UV light projects were delayed due to construction complications from the suppliers. But those UV lights arrived at Cave Spring in late October of 2024. and the trial work started to make sure that they work. And then the UV light testing is going to progress with the help of Mary Ruth and her team at the university through the winter months before we go back to Cave Spring with the UV lights for 2025 season. I think the apple harvester trial, we should probably change that title, like where it says Tavel. We weren't only going to do Tavel. I think it was just decided that Tavel was the only company that wanted to come to Ontario. I think the idea here is that there's an interest of this group to do work on crop harvesting in some form. And so we had a subcommittee on apples. That was kind of the first subcommittee that went together to look at the feasibility of bringing an apple harvester to the market. The several meetings were had with 3 apple growers in Ontario, between myself and the company and the growers. We had probably 4 to 5 3-hour meetings with each grower between March and the end of May of 2024, and we could not get agreement from any of the growers to participate in an apple harvester trial. There just wasn't. It isn't that the growers weren't interested; it was that the cost of doing the trial, it was just exceeded what basically anybody wanted to commit to in that. So I think we need to revisit we'll need to restart this harvester discussion, and probably a little bit earlier. Last year we didn't start the discussion until probably it wasn't until March, and then by that time the growers had already committed on other projects. And so I think we want to maybe start meeting with the growers here in early January if we want to bring this back up. So it isn't that the growers don't want to do this, but I think we need to kind of get that going. And we did collect a significant amount of ROI calculation information from the growers. So I was able to get some very detailed information on, harvest costs, harvest times, bins per day, labor costs, all those kinds of things. So I think we want to move on. I see the slide projections moving. Then you go. There we go. Sorry. And then with respect to the Oz, there was an Oz at the Western Fair broken most of 2024, and but the one Oz did travel around to do a bunch of demonstrations, and that will likely continue.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chuck.
Great.
Yeah,
Right.
I apologize for moving the slides on you. I was looking to see if there are any apple growers on the call today, just on that January mention.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody on the call today that is an apple grower?
I don't think so, but I know that the 3 growers that we talked to still want to talk about this. They didn't say no forever. They just said no for 2024.
Okay. So we'll add that to our list to follow up on those 3 growers. Okay, so kind of moving into the next part of today. So with what Chuck kind of had given as an overview, there's kind of a 2-part. So we are looking for feedback from the group, from anybody as we look into planning for summer of 2026 season, are there any projects that the group wishes to move forward for consideration? And are there any emerging challenges that the group wants to focus on? And second to that, I will also put in the chat, I'm just going to pause my screen sharing so I can get the link, the 2 links to the forms that we've created, so that if you are not somebody that's comfortable sharing it on the screen, you can also send it to us after the meeting. These are currently draft forms, so there will be probably some changes coming within the next 2 weeks in regards to them, but at least we can capture your information or you can take a look at them to kind of get an idea of the scope as well. So I will just bear with me for a second here.
And Jason reminded me as while you're doing that we also started using the Vivid camera for yield prediction on the TED robot in grapes, and that was also part of the TED project as well.
Stephen, go ahead there.
Yeah, just a question, and I'm not sure who it's to. Are we comfortable with the pace of the research that's underway, or are we looking to accelerate it or status quo? I'm just trying to get a level set for me as a new member.
I can take that, Chuck, if you want. Well, you can go first, but I have an answer as well.
Well, how about technically, I'll let you go first.
Okay.
Go for it.
So I wasn't actually here this past summer, so in terms of the pace, I don't have that answer. But in piece of that, one of the things that we're looking to do as this group moves from a little bit of a grassroots organization to a little bit more of an established entity is as we look into having research that's done, having a bit more of reporting guidelines so that when we're giving presentations to the group and we're collecting data, it's a bit more streamlined and it's a little more transparent so that when we are giving presentations, it's not like, here's a Word version of what we had originally planned, and we have a bit more information to share with the group as well, because I think that will help decision making. It's just as the first few summers got underway and the first few bits, I would say we're a little bit more like, okay, have to modify this robot because this thing isn't working the way it's supposed to, that kind of thing. It just takes a little bit to get that engine moving. Chuck, did you want to add to that?
I think that's pretty much exactly what I was going to say, is that we're trying to put some structure and some rigor behind the projects, and then I think we can actually probably accelerate and do more. I'm not going to say that means that we're going to double or triple or something like that. I don't know what acceleration means, but I think the idea is to have some more rigor and structure behind how the projects are being chosen and how they're being reported on would be the main thing.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that.
There's no new budget, Steve, so the budget's kind of fixed for what Bridget and Chuck are working with. I think they'll be able to get more efficiency as they pointed out, but what Chuck, Jason, Curtis, Grant, what they've done is absolutely fantastic. We've taken equipment from around the world and locally here that had never been in a field, and through a lot of love, sweat, blood, tears, got the damn things working in multiple crops, and as well as leveraging up organizations like the Muck Group and OMAFA and really there's a whole bunch of stakeholders here, but we got this group kind of coming together with the same vision of seeing if we can make them work here in Ontario for the benefit of the farmers. So the progress in my mind is outstanding. Can we do better? Can we have a bit more process to it? Sure. But the startup phase in my mind has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and don't take my question as a criticism.
No. I'm just giving you some somebody that's been watching it from close.
Yeah, so you've gone from crawling to walking and maybe toddling along now and going to start moving a bit quicker based on learnings.
Absolutely.
The one thing that so I'm pretty excited about it, but the iteration that takes place over time when you're thinking about how you determine projects. I've often believed in sort of high value, low implementation return, right, versus high implementation, really a low value proposition at the end of the day. And I'm not sure if you put it through a 2x2 matrix to make that determination or not, but Yeah, thanks for the update, everybody. Bridget, fucking.
Definitely good
Uh,
feedback. Like that's maybe something too, as we look into evaluating which projects are selected. Like in previous, it was more like who had kind of capacity to actually trial the certain robots out in certain areas and grower connections and that kind of thing. But you're right, it does have a need to have a bit more process and strategy behind it.
Right. And I think at the AAC meeting that Joe and I were at yesterday, a point that was brought up that I thought was a good point is that we have to keep in mind, what is the process and the product that we're trying to improve at the end? Like we're not just trying technology for the sake of trying technology. The goal here is, how are we improving something of the industry? So, if we're going to use a UV light, um, is that going to, improve the final product by making it healthier, by making it more productive? If we're going to use a robot for weed control, is this to improve soil health? Like there has to be an overarching business. We're advancing something. We're advancing that product at the end. And that needs to remain part of the vision, which is kind of a nuance. It doesn't change things too much, but it is part of the nuance of what we're doing.
And to Carrie's question as well, from Canadian flower growers. So are there any plans to do greenhouse research? So currently, I would say for the next 3 to 5 years, the focus is field crop specific. That doesn't mean that if you have information on this is something that we think is important, please send it our way, because we are still also trying to make sure that we're getting that information from the ecosystem and allocating resources where appropriate. But currently it's field crop specific until 2028.
Go ahead, Sean.
Good morning, and sorry if my doggo starts chiming in here. She's very sad this morning and she's wearing a cone. As far she may jump up. As far as priorities go, I see a couple different avenues for research, and both of them are around money, of course. So where are we going to be helping the growers save money from pest issues, which is kind of where we've been, and it's probably where our strength is. And then where can we help with labor, especially in the horticultural market? When I was both at UF, that was a major talking point. I suspect in Ontario, the labor for the vegetables is probably a pretty large talking point as well. For those who don't know me, I'm a weed scientist in Saskatoon. So I primarily work in wheat and canola and pulses, but I do have a background in horticulture as well. So yeah, so either for the pests, of course, so it could be herbicide resistance mitigation, spot spraying, of course, or even just detection and then control in a non-chemical means. Mechanical would be the most obvious. Ways to detect herbicide resistance earlier in the field with escapes, either through drone-based imagery or cameras, things like that. That's the two more broader topic areas. Of course, you can define that down when it comes to Ontario production, of course, and maybe the pest aspect might be a little easier to work cross commodity versus harvesters, where you need to be very specific. An apple versus a tomato is a little different task, or what have you there. Onions, of course. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Fantastic, thank you. And I know the herbicide resistance has come up a few times, so that one I think is starred quite a bit on our end as well. Is there anyone else that had any questions? Or I know it's a lot in one meeting to kind of throw at you, so we can certainly say take it away as well. Think about it, come back to us. Dan, if you wouldn't mind just throwing the AgRobotics Working Group email in there as well. That's kind of the centralized location for us for getting everything.
Yeah, and I think maybe at a at an upcoming meeting fairly soon. If people want to save their comment and suggestions, we could have that, for either the first couple of meetings in January, maybe something like that.
Definitely. And I also think the Guelph team is going to be giving a presentation. I don't remember when, but I think it's sometime in the new year on the research that they had done this past summer with you as well, Chuck.
Just jump in, Taylor. Don't wait for us.
Thanks. Yeah, my comments. First of all, thanks. I really appreciate this opportunity and for you to kind of present and kind of update us on what you're working on behind the scenes, because it's been a great experience being part of the working group. And for me as a trade commissioner supporting exporters, we get a lot of people who are not quite export ready, who need this community, who need to they need like a soft landing point into the industry. And so I guess that would be my only comment, was that you should consider getting into greenhouse or indoor, because it seems like if not you, then there does seem to be a need for something like that for the indoor space, only because the processes of kind of like community and grassroots validation of technology and confirming of opportunities is extremely valuable. And the ag space is very much I would say, community driven. So this has been a great working group for being part of that. Thanks.
Thank you, Taylor. Thanks for that feedback.
Just a comment for that, Taylor. Individual companies, I see a couple of people on here that are interested in greenhouse technology. They can still do that, and we will still support them. We just may not have major research projects that we're finding leverage with. So if they have questions about grants or people or contacts, it's hard if you're a small company.
Mm-hmm.
You can leverage this group and its collective wisdom, knowledge networks to, hopefully advance their projects with less risk.
Yes.
So just even knowing you is valuable to somebody that wants to take technology to the market or Europe or wherever. So that's where I think this group, there's 1 + 1 = 10.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can just make sure everybody's communicating, having contacts with Vineland, having contacts with U of Guelph, and as the group matures, I think there will be opportunities to help in that greenhouse space. So
Awesome.
Just a comment.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Fantastic. Thanks, Eric. And yeah, as Joe kind of shared, like obviously at the moment there are some funding priorities that we have in terms of the research dollars that we can allocate in specific projects. But as we look with this project or with this working group and what it might look like in 5, 10, 15 years, like that doesn't mean that if you're outside of Ontario, if you're maybe not ready to be commercially ready yet as a company, it's greenhouse specific. We could still want to hear from you. We still want to know what's going on and hear those concerns, because we can still help from the ecosystem standpoint. And it's still good for us to know, so that if there is somebody here that's maybe more connected higher up the chain or whatever, that they can pass that information along as well. Okay, fantastic. So thanks everybody for your feedback. If there isn't anything else just regarding the research, I'll give you some time to kind of digest things a little bit, come back to Dan or myself with questions. And from there, we'll regroup in the new year during one of the meetings, just to kind of give an opportunity for people to actually have some time to process. And then I will hand it back to Dan so we can move into the rest of the agenda for today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bridget. Ian, go ahead.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments. Bridget made mention of the 300 people and the fact that that's a lot of people to have on and stuff, but I really want to encourage people, like, this is a safe space. Don't be shy. Ask your questions, make your comments. That's how we all learn. And communication is what it's all about, right? The second thing is that from the list there, in terms of the aspects of the working group. One thing I think we need to look at is we get invited to speak at some events, but we should be pushing to get ourselves on the agendas at some events, right? So for instance, I don't think there was anything on AgRobotics at the recent Ontario Federation of Agriculture meeting and stuff, our annual conference. Last week I spoke to Solio AgriMart Group, and they were quite intrigued with what's going on and stuff. So I think we shouldn't be passive. I think we should be assertive in getting ourselves on some of those programs so that we can encourage more people to be putting this seed in their head and thinking about it, because the pace of change is continuing to go quickly and it's going to speed up. And we haven't really been concentrating on sort of some of the bigger acreage crops, but I think there's neat opportunities, and the way to start that is by raising awareness. And I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Good points. Thank you, Ian. Appreciate that. Conrad?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we actually are very much interested in greenhouse applications, and we don't always understand. We're a robotics company, but we don't always understand exactly what is needed and what kind of work would be valuable for greenhouse operators, for growers. So I'm not sure how we could do this, but maybe a subsection of this group or some other way to actually find out exactly where is the biggest pain point, where's the biggest opportunities, what could be done. Obviously, we don't want to start with the most complex applications. We want to try something easy and then feed ourselves into that. But we definitely would like to work on that area. We do have a rover that actually can go in the greenhouse. It can reach up to 15 feet high. It has a very solid base that can carry up to 100 kilograms. It can find itself in the greenhouse, but the problem is we're trying to find actual application that would make sense for growers.
Chuck?
I think one of the things when we talk about structure, Conrad, of the group, is adding these subcommittees to do just what you just talked about. And then one of the reasons why Dan is recording these meetings is the idea is to, after the fact, to go through and pull out some of these priorities that get mentioned. And one of the reasons why Bridget talked about asking, trying to make sure that we get farmers and other people involved in our events. So, and if we can't get a farmer every week to a call like this, we need to make sure that we engage them at grower events and speaking engagements. So, we talk about getting on the agenda, like what Ian talked about. The reason to get on that agenda is not just to toot our own horn, but it's also to engage with the end users of the products that you're trying to produce, so that we're focusing on the right things. That it's all kind of connected in a way. I'm stealing your agenda here, Dan. Sorry.
No worries. I'll let Carrie add their comments, and then I'll move forward.
Thanks for that. I appreciate the comments, and I do think that the concept of a subcommittee looking at greenhouse work would be a great idea. I think given the wide adoption of greenhouse farmers using automation and robotics in their facilities currently, there are huge opportunities to kind of wait till 2028. Seems like a bit of a missed opportunity. So I'd be eager to participate should there be a subcommittee looking at greenhouse work specifically.
I'll just go ahead and say, if you're interested in being on part of the subcommittee on greenhouse specific work, throw your name into the chat. Carrie, I got your name already. And we'll go from there. Conrad, okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Bridget. All right, so I'll move into upcoming events. Still not too many on there at the moment, but we've got the Grand River Agricultural Society Spark Symposium, the AgRobotics Working Group Demo Days on July 8th and July 22nd. it's a while away, but we want to get it on everybody's radar that that's going to be coming up. Also the Ontario Fruit and Vegetable Convention, that'll be on February 19th and 20th, which will be added on to the agenda next week. The London Farm Show, March 5th to the 7th, as well as the Ottawa Valley Farm Show from the 11th to the 13th of March. Chuck, you had a comment on that?
I been asked to speak at the Kemptville Ag Conference on January 21st, specifically around the working group and ag technology. And then they've asked me to be part of their Tech Talk Tuesdays as well, which I think will be nice. And my team has been at the Great Lakes Ag Expo this last few days, so we'll report on that next week.
Awesome, thank you. Heading into project updates, we basically just we're getting close to the end of the year. So we're gonna be taking, after next week's meeting, we'll be taking a break for a few weeks over the holiday time before we reconvene in January. But we just wanted to put out sort of a call for speakers and presentations. We're always looking for new people who are interested in presenting and speaking. So if you are interested in getting a time slot one Friday, or you have an idea for someone you would recommend to us who we should reach out to speak, please definitely either throw it in the chat now or send it over our way in an email. If you can CC that person in an email, even better, because it helps make that connection. And then we can go from there, and hopefully we can fill out we'll be able to fill out our calendar for next year with great speakers that everybody thinks would be valuable. So any help in that, because you are the industry experts, you are our connection to the people that we need to speak. So please, we'd appreciate any leads on that anybody can provide. Funding announcements and opportunities. We don't have any new ones in there this week from last week. But as always, do check them out. And then we've sort of been doing this a bit for the meeting today, but I'll head into the roundtable. So if anyone did have, I see there's a hand up already from Ian. If anybody did have any more questions, comments, anything like that, please go ahead, and I'll let Ian start off.
Again, back to the function of the working group. We're sort of trying to be a pool for knowing where funding is, but maybe we need a group of people that are out there pushing the funding agencies that this is an area that they need to invest in. And maybe we have that, but again, trying to give more credence and awareness to the AgRobotics working group. We should be saying, here are the problems in agriculture, here's the type of funding that is necessary, and please consider this when you're putting your new funding models together and stuff.
Perfect. Thanks, Ian.
I think related to that, Ian, it was brought up yesterday that I think Robert was there as well, and Joe, and about how there's 350 or something like that different funding programs were available, and it's difficult for companies to navigate that space, and trying to figure out how to pigeonhole themselves into those programs. So I think it's always an interesting debate on what's the right way to make that work. And paying 10% or 20% to a consultant probably isn't always the best way.
And I continually have a battle with my masters to say, let's not do things the way we always have done, because that's very restrictive. We should be looking at all different levels of government and through different ministries. Agriculture is an exciting place. It's an essential place that we need for life as we know it. And we should be looking for funding from a broader sector of areas that could offer funding.
Amy, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to highlight that I posted in the chat a job posting. I'm hiring right now, and I put the job posting in the chat. And if anybody knows a potential candidate, please share the posting with them. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. I'll make sure that the posting gets thrown up on the new website job board that we mentioned a few weeks ago. Don't
Oh,
forget
that's
that's
great.
there.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions, comments, queries, thoughts? No? All right.
Sorry, I did, Dan. Sorry, just a
Oh,
quick thing.
okay.
I just wondered maybe for future consideration, if when people are joining this group, if there would be an opportunity for them to opt into sharing their information, on a database or something. You've been great at connecting us on an individual basis, but I know sometimes I'm on these calls and I see some people that I would love to reach out to. And I'm just wondering again, if somebody, if people could have the option to opt in for sort of, availability of their information. That's just a consideration going forward.
Robert, it's very funny you mentioned that because we just recently on our membership page of the website where people can sign up, we just recently added in 2 new lines for consenting to have your company shared as a company that's a part of the working group, as well as consenting to have your email made available to anyone who might want to connect.
Well, perfect. I'd love to go back in and I will change mine then. So if I can do that, so.
Well, what I will say to that is, so we've got that for new members going forward. But that being said, what we were planning to do was send out an email to all current members. So that that gives everyone who's currently in there the chance to specify if they would like to have their no emails will be made publicly available, but it's just if someone says, hey, could I connect with XYZ people in this area, then it's like, okay, we have a list of people that have agreed to share their contact information with anyone who has asked. But it's all internal, no emails would be shared. And all this info will be outlined in the email that we plan to send.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. And as usual, you're one step ahead of me. So
no, it's not one step ahead. It's just great minds think alike, right?
But Dan,
Thanks,
can
Dan.
a question in that email also be whether or not, I have no problem with my email being shared type of thing, right? And maybe others have that way too. And if people could have their email shared on our website database, I'd be supportive of that, especially if there was a section in there saying, what I'd be willing to help people with type of thing.
Right. Yeah.
I will just jump in quickly. So we were considering just having company name, person's name, if they're comfortable with it. If you don't think your company would be comfortable with it or whatever, that's partly why we're asking. We probably will not have any emails directly on a website though, just because Tyler actually showed us a fantastic tool that you can just mine emails, but just on another side of this, like Western Fair has shows, and we know that there's a big issue in the shows industry where anytime you publish an email on a website, people can mine that and then they'll send out scam information to it. So we don't want that piece to be available, but we do want to have that if somebody's trying to connect that they can, and we can actually share that information. And I'll let Dan touch on the LinkedIn group too, because he's also got that going.
Yes, sorry. I thought you might be speaking for longer. I was just
Oh, sorry.
pull up the link while you were talking, but no, I'm doing both. Yes, I can get the link.
I can touch on the LinkedIn group if you want us to do what you're doing, and then we can. So Daryl had mentioned the LinkedIn group. So we did create a LinkedIn page a few weeks ago. Dan had started that. But yes, we can look into a group as well if that is of interest to the membership.
Awesome. Thanks.
Sorry, I don't know if I gave you enough time to try to.
No worries. I got it here, but now it's not. I put the link in the chat, but now it's not, it won't send, there we go. Yes, there we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Was there, any other thoughts, questions, queries? I did see, Kelly Knight shared BioEnterprise recently released their national call to action report. She posted the link there if anybody is interested in checking that out. I can also probably add that to our articles section for next week as well. And Isabel from FedNor said she posted a link for finding funding opportunities. Excellent. Thank you very much. You can check that out and I will copy that and put it onto the agenda for next week so everybody's got that going forward. All right. With that, I think that brings us to the end of our time. Thank you everybody so much for joining, for your comments and participation. It's much appreciated. Next week will be the final meeting for 2024. So make sure you hop in for that. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. Have yourself a great weekend, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
So I was thinking, Bridget and Dan, like, I think that was